answers? I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work. When you go to church. When you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
It wasn't until about 4 years ago that I what we call breakthrough. I began to have these memories. Then I had to start putting my life together. One of the earliest memories that I had was a brick wall, and they took these babies and they knit in a circle on that wall, and then they had 3 crosses. And in the middle cross, they had a man hung up there. Now that man had tried to save my twin sister and me. And unfortunately, they captured him. And so they hung him up there, and then they hung my twin sister on one cross, and they hung me on the other side on another cross. But they had this pile of bloody parts in front of them. And they stood there with my older sister, and they threw those parts at us as we hung up on the wall. They follow a religious calendar, similar to the Christians have a Christian calendar. And at one of their big times is at the crucifixion of Christ. And so what they were doing is they were playing out the crucifixion of Christ.
The younger the soul, the more innocent the soul, because they've had less chance to sin. So the more innocent the soul that they sacrifice, the more power in the sacrifice. And that was told to me, again, by a practicing Satanist. When they kill a child and they've brought them to total fear, if they eat the flesh, then they, of course, acquire the child.
They also are very heavy into mind control, and they pass this on from generation to generation. In other words, they'll have a whole family that'll practice Satan worship.
I was alone in the room at first. Then there were people that came in. They looked like priests. They had black suits on like a priest. They didn't have a white collar. They had black masks on. Then they began to chant. They brought the baby that was in the bucket. They pulled a baby up out of that bucket. And the baby was kind of whimpering like a baby, a newborn baby. They literally took the knife and went.
Who trained you? The hands of death. We were trained in detail what to do, what to look for. It's just like going out and going to school. It's tight. We learn through books, through actual participation in things.
Lucas claimed that he was trained to kill as a Satanist.
When we have tried to get protection from law enforcement, they don't believe us.
Imagine, if you can, a life without uncertainty, freedom from doubt, the ability to choose, single-mindedness.
One life from each of us, Cal, is all he asks.
and he rewards our devotion 1,000-fold. Personal desires, oh yes, of course, anything. That's part of it.
It's only the beginning.
There was a time, Cal, when man was at one with the gods before the fall. Now we're at one again. And their benediction is power. It's a power you can't imagine. Power to create a world of our choosing. Power to destroy those who oppose us.
I was really involved with the Satanic Church every day. The high priest would come and get me, and they would take me to the church, and they would violate me, we'd have communion every day. And that consisted of blood and urine and semen and a black widow. And that was, an everyday part of my life. When I was 4 years old, I was raped and molested by a high priest, and I knew nothing else of all that stuff, and I was just brainwashed with the Satanism and knowing that Satan was God and God was not real. Satan was God for me. And I thought, I was so numb to it, really.
What is the primary goal or purpose of Satanism?
Yeah, their purpose is to rule the world.
What was your purpose?
My purpose was to get all the power that I could and to get as high up as I could. All the children's posters that you see that are missing, they're pretty much dead. They have underground caverns in the mountains, and they keep the children and the kids and the women and men there, make the people so numb with curses and stuff, and they'd also drug them up, and they'd take a sacrificial knife and they'd start from the chest and move all the way down to your abdomen, and then that's how they sacrificed, and they collect the blood and they drink it. When the mid-September through mid-November, they sacrifice babies and nothing but babies because they need the pure blood of the untainted children. That was the hardest part for me, is like hearing those babies literally scream and cry. And then seeing their blood flow. It was horrible.
Rebecca, where did they get the babies?
Yeah, they have mothers that are expecting, that they hold in the church, and they also have people that they kidnap, and they impregnate them through whatever, and they get babies from everywhere.
Why is it that no one knows this?
Because there's Satanists in the police force and also in the government, the army. They're everywhere. They're even on the council of, the representatives of the United States also. And they're silenced because this is not being exposed, because they don't want it to be exposed. Because they're really good at lying and hiding things.
Rebecca, what happens to the people that want to come out of Satanism?
They get killed. They get followed, they get taken, they get sacrificed in front of the congregation of the Satanic Church.
Why?
Because they know too much information about the Satanists and who their names and places of where they keep the people underground, and they just know too much information. It's like being in a gang or in a mafia. You don't get out alive without consequences. I don't know how to tell everybody that's out there that I came out, because I'm not sure if anybody's gonna believe this, because it's so much like a fantasy. Yeah, warfare is real. We're born into a war. And yeah, you'd be very foolish to not to understand that, because demons are real and people are influenced by bad spirits and demonic activity, and they follow people like me around because, yeah, I know too much.
Beasley was up commentating, presiding over things. When they dragged onto stage, they dragged a heavily pregnant woman onto stage here, and she was screaming her head off because she wasn't drugged and she wasn't unethically hypnotised. And I remember sitting over there thinking, oh my God, she's not drugged, she's not hypnotised. And it was horrendous. So there's adrenaline going through her system and adrenaline going through her body, and she's heavily pregnant and naked, and she had a brown bowler haircut. And she's one of what they call a breeder, and she's used just for breeding for these rituals and for child sex trafficking. And they drag her onto the stage and they lay her down, and the head for a sacrifice is always here, so they're and the feet's that end, and where she's screaming, right, Beasley's over here, and he goes to us, I'll never forget this, he goes, she's screaming and making fast, and he goes, oh, he says, you know, he's back like this, and he comes forward and he goes, excuse us for a minute. And everyone laughs. Everyone thinks that's hilarious, except for me. And then they've got, because they had two big security guards dragging her onto stage, and they needed extra help, so it was like usually the thug type who likes to hurt people. And the cop, he used what he knows about holding people down, and the four of them pin her down. And they're holding her legs and her arms and whatever, shoulders. And then Benno has a ceremonial dagger, and he's like, it's further back. It's a shame this is here because he's further back, and he does his usual crap. You know, they worship their gods, you know, Baal, Lucifer, hail Satan, son of the morning, and all the other gods and goddesses, you know. And then he has this knife, and he slams it after he's done all his ritualistic sort of chanting and words and whatever, and people are chanting or whatever, and he slams this dagger, ceremonial dagger, two hands, into the woman's, I don't know, around about here where the bone ends, and he can get in, and he tears her open with the knife right down to the pelvic bone, and blood just pisses out everywhere. It's like a waterfall and just everything. And then they pull the baby out, and then there are people assisting, and they've got a gold platter, and they've got a chalice, and they collect the blood of the baby. They drain the baby's blood in the chalice, and then they chop the baby up and put it on the gold platter, and and then they pass it around for Holy Communion. So it's the black mass, the real typical old-fashioned black mass that the Catholic mass is based on, right? The Catholic mass is the Latin mass is a sanitised version of this. There's nothing Christian about Catholic mass. And so that's all going on. And then the next thing I remember is they lined up, this stage was lined with children who must have been about, they looked about maybe 8, 9, 10 years of age, that sort of thing. And they had them lined up like this on the stage. They went like this, and they lined the children up. And the children were hypnotised. And the children came forward and they were like this. They were just like this. They just, you know, as they were told, they did nothing and they just stared straight ahead. And they're very attractive children. And then had a samurai sword. It was incredibly sharp. And he's crap. He doesn't have any style about him, but the basic thing is he goes along, each child, and he has a certain stance about him. Is it that way? Or is it that way? And he slices off the heads of each child. I don't know if he turns or I can't remember what he does, but then he, you know, goes along and, you know, like this, and he goes along and chops off each head. And each kid falls, the body just falls, and blood is going everywhere. I mean, if you DNA tested this area, there would have to be remains of someone's blood and DNA in here. There'd have to be somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, then they break out into a bloodied orgy. Now these people, the whole point behind doing the having the woman not drugged and not hypnotised is to pump as much adrenaline through her blood as possible, because these people are addicted to adrenaline, and when they drink the blood, you know, it's, you know, the baby's blood. You know, the baby's in distress, so it passes on somehow to the kid, and that's why they, you know, have this sort of situation going on. And they collected some other blood from her or something, you know, on the way. But at the end, I was over here and a bloody orgy broke out and everyone started having sex. They're sexually aroused by this stuff. You've got to understand that they are sexually aroused by this crap. And I go down. By now, I was over there, but they kind of clear the floor and, I don't know, everyone's just having sex with people. And Kim Beasley Sr. was down here and I was there, and he came down and he picked up a head of one of the kids that had dark hair, and I'm standing here. So the table's in the way, but I'm here. And Beasley picks up this head and he shoves it in my face like this, and there's this decapitated head in my face, and he says, "Take ye, eat." And he made me take a bite out of the face. And then everyone just had an orgy. It was just disgusting. And the most vile thing you've ever seen in your life. And that's Bathurst City Hall.
What does he say? Saying, "Please don't hurt me." Did you hear him fall? Did you hear him fall? What'd you do to him, Paul?
I did what they told me to do to him.
What did they say to do to him, Paul?
Have sex with him?
Okay. Now you were used to having sex with people, right? Something else must have happened then, wasn't it, Paul?
He was crying and I was telling him. Telling him that you're alright. And I told the guy, I said, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. But they're going, do it or else, or we'll finish you too.
Who's telling you this, Paul?
The guy that was directing the thing. Says you either do this or we're going to kill you too.
Do what, Paul? Do what?
Screw the kid.
Okay, so you screwed the kid, then what happened? Did Nicholas screw the kid too?
Yeah.
Something you're not telling me, Paul.
Yeah. Had some other guy came in and we didn't even know about it. And Nicholas didn't know what was going to go on next. This guy came in and he started kicking the shit out of Nicholas and he started trying to kick the shit out of me. He started beating on the kid. He started beating on him.
Who started beating on him?
This guy that was with the film crew and stuff, he came in and he started having sex with this kid.
Okay.
He was bleeding.
Bleeding from where?
Right.
Okay. You okay?
And then this guy dragged him around.
Are you in the cage?
He started dragging him around. And he kept, he just dragged the kid around. He was still having sex with him. He just tossing this kid around like
Try to speak up, son.
he was tossing this kid around like it was a bag of potatoes or something. He started slamming him all over the place. And then he came back and he started kicking the shit out of me again. He started kicking my head. I started to do something to him with a stick. Right in my balls and couldn't fight back. Then he took me and Nicholas and shoved us in the cage. And he took this kid and he sat there and sat him up.
Sat him up.
Right next to the cage, and then he started kicking the kid in his face. The kid was just crying. I kept yelling at the guy's cell phone, I said, kill him if I got a hold of him. And I said, no, they shot him.
You what?
Shot him. Shot him in his head. Right after that, I tried to kill myself. Took us back to the hotel and tried to cut my wrist.
Who shot him, Paul? Did you shoot him with a pistol or a rifle?
Because they had a gun. Pistol.
Where exactly did they shoot him on his body?
Kind of his head.
Front and behind?
The front. I was just crying so much after they did that stuff that they opened the case, they grabbed a necklace, and they...
My name is Mary Knight. I'm a survivor of ritualistic child abuse, child sex trafficking, incest, and other extreme forms of child abuse. I did have a horrendous childhood, which included I was used in child pornography. I was also sex trafficked by being taken to motel rooms of men, by being sold to in my front yard of my childhood home, close to my swing set. I actually saw men hand money to my mother. It was a group of men, and I was sexually assaulted. This happened throughout my childhood, including my teenage years. I remember being brought to hotel rooms of men as a teenager. Some of my abuse could be considered satanic ritual abuse. I know that's a controversial term. My definition of satanic ritual abuse is that it is extreme abuse, physical and sexual, and that it involves multiple perpetrators and or multiple child victims, which mine did. My earliest memory is of being sexually abused by my father. I was also sexually abused by my mother. I was sexually abused by other family members, grandparents. And one thing that I would consider satanic ritual abuse is I was put in a coffin. I was put in a coffin with my sister's body. She died when she was 11 and I was 9. What I remember about it is that even though her body had been mutilated, and I'd had to watch and participate in that, which I also would consider satanic abuse. When I was put in the coffin with her body, I was glad to get to be close to her. I knew, it was the last time I could be close to her, and I remember touching her hair. And one reason I know it's true is if I were writing a story, if I were making up a story about a child being put in a coffin, I would never think that the child would be happy to be close to the corpse. But I didn't consider it a corpse. I considered it my sister's body. And I liked to get to touch her hair one last time. My parents led a complete double life, and they went to church 3 times a week. I was well-dressed at school. There were no bruises where they would have been detected. I didn't remember my abuse except for while it was going on, so I couldn't report it to anyone because when it was going on, I was around abusers, and I didn't remember it otherwise, even as a child. Some people with recovered memories remembered their abuse up to a certain age. No, mine was just while I was being abused. I remembered it. Otherwise, I wasn't aware of it. That enabled me to make good grades because, I didn't think about my abuse when I was at school. I was always afraid of my parents and I didn't know why, but I could never say I was afraid of my parents. So my sister died of cancer. She died of brain cancer. I know she died of the illness because I saw her in the hospital. My parents did not murder my sister. I know for sure my parents didn't murder my sister. What happened after she died, I think, is that the funeral home picked up her body, which is usual, pick up the body from the hospital. But what's unusual is they brought it to my childhood church. And in the middle of the night or in the very early hours of the morning, I was brought to my childhood church and outside, and that's where my sister's body was mutilated with a knife. The knife was placed in my hand, and abusers do that to make the child feel responsible for the abuse. That was a really hard memory for me because I couldn't imagine how did anyone get me to stab my sister with a knife, even though she was deceased. But when I finally remembered it, it was actually very simple. My father said, do it, and I did it. I knew that you had to do what my father said. And that really explains a lot of what they were able to do to me throughout my life. I was told to do it, and I did. I don't know if the funeral home owner was in on it, but the employee definitely was. After the incident and before the funeral, I was made to have with the employee from the funeral home. I've tried to find out, I found out who the owner of the funeral home is, and I wasn't able to talk to him, even though the receptionist said she'd pass a message along. He's now retired. But I don't know if he was in on it anyway, because I have researched this some, so the death certificate has the person's name who was there at the time the funeral was officiated. But that could be a completely different person than the person who handled the body prior to it being put in the coffin. So it was a closed casket funeral. I will say after that happened, one thing I know that happened more often was my father would have sex with me at night. Another horrible memory, though, is because my sister and I were in the same room, is before she died, my father going to my sister's bed. I mean, both are just horrible. So one of the ways I was abused, and this is common in satanic ritual abuse, was by me being made to witness other children being abused. And one of the incidences that is without question satanic ritual abuse is I was told to bow down to Satan. Now, I didn't want to do that, but I was convinced that if I didn't do it, there was a baby there who would be killed. So I did it. And I remember regaining that memory. I remember God just saying to me, "You didn't do anything wrong, Mary. You did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong." And I know I didn't do anything wrong. And as an adult, if I were in a situation where a child's life was threatened, I would do absolutely anything to avoid the child being harmed. One thing that commonly happens with satanic ritual abuse is that children are put in coffins. And what I know, I'd say this about satanic ritual abuse is we know it happens because there's so many survivors like myself. But when we start trying to speak out, we're made to appear crazy. And so most people are not willing to speak out about it. I know people who come to me and tell me, disclose to me who I'm on Facebook with them. They don't disclose to anyone else. One was a minister. She said she didn't think her church could handle it. And she did go public about incest, and she did go public about being a survivor of child sex trafficking. But she has not gone public about being a survivor of satanic ritual abuse. And so did anyone question that with my parents? Well, no, but there were people who knew about it. There were other people at my childhood church who knew about it. There were other people at my childhood church who did similar things. For example, I was sexually abused by multiple adults on church property because there were other church leaders, including my father. My parents were highly respected at church. Now, not everyone at the church abused children, but my parents weren't the only ones, so it was easy to hide. I don't know that there were multiple employees at the funeral home who were in on it, but I know there was one employee, and it just stands to reason that the owner of a funeral home has to have employees. They can't be available 24 hours a day. No person could do that. But I've heard from other survivors of satanic ritual abuse things that happen inside funeral homes. And, after the incident I told about, I was taken to the funeral home and more things happened to me there, including communion was desecrated. I was told I needed to eat part of my sister's body and drink her blood. I know I was tricked because not too many years ago, I regained a more full memory of that, and it was a communion wafer placed in my mouth. It took me a long time to remember the taste of it, but it definitely wasn't my sister's body. It was the kind of communion wafer that is commonly used by Episcopal Church and Methodist Church, and not the kind of communion, it's not what we used at my childhood church. So I think they were trying to mess with me to where they would make it to where it was difficult for me to be a member of any church, but they didn't do it. I still like taking communion. It's a beautiful Christian ceremony, and my views about Christianity have changed and become more liberal, but I still really treasure taking communion. No one besides me, I have not heard anyone else say my sister's body was mutilated. I do have siblings. They inherited my parents' estate, which was a multi-million-dollar estate. I was disinherited. I don't want to have my sister's body exhumed. She's still my sister. I don't want to do that. If I did try to do it, I don't think I'd be able to because, like I say, a brother of mine is executor of the estate. So I don't think I could, even if I tried. But the other thing I thought of is how much trickery is used, because what happened at the church when I know it was my sister's body was soft tissue damage. You couldn't tell that from exhuming the body. And then what happened at the funeral home when they said they crushed her skull with a hammer, was total mutilation. But I don't know it was my sister's body. If my husband was murdered today and they started doing all this torture of me and saying that this was my husband's skull that they were crushing with, I don't know that I think they could trick me today. I'm 67 years old. I think they could trick me today because I would be in such a emotional state of my, of what was happening to my husband's body that I think they could still trick me. So was it really her body or was it someone else's body? And this is what satanic ritual abuse survivors do. Sometimes they use an animal's body and say it's a person's body. And this is another incident I do want to talk about because I would say this is one of the ones that I would say was satanic ritual or could be considered satanic ritual. I do not know that my parents were worshiping Satan. I absolutely don't know that. They never said they worshiped Satan. They said they were Christians and they went to church 3 times a week. But what they did was they said that they were using fetuses and which I would have considered babies. I was 4 or 5, and I had to stand there while they sacrificed them on this, like an altar, and they were at the top of the hill. I was at the bottom of the hill. But I don't know that those were human. I don't even know. How hard is it to trick a 4 or 5-year-old? And I was standing some distance away. What I remember clearly is that my feet hurt. I remember that I was wearing saddle oxfords, which are hard leather shoes. That's the kind of shoes kids wore at that age. And I remember my feet hurting so bad that I would try to stand different, and then I would stand on the side of my shoe and different things because it was so hard to stand for so long. Now, how long was I standing there? I don't know. I was 4 or 5 years old. It could have been 15 minutes. That could seem like a long time. They just use trickery so much, and then people report this happened to me and they're not believed. Well, yeah, that's why they trick you. I know I was raped once by someone wearing a police uniform. I really don't think it was a police officer, but that got me afraid of the police. And I didn't remember that until, I started remembering abuse at age 37, but yeah, that's when I remembered. And I don't think I have been sexually assaulted ever by a police officer. And I'm now able to be less afraid. But I'd be afraid if I saw a police officer and I was going below the speed limit. I would still be afraid and I would slow down. So it wasn't a rational thing. My worst memory is the one of my sister's body being mutilated. But if I were going to tell you some of my other memories, you would be surprised they weren't my worst memories. So before that happened to me, one thing that happened, and I tell about it in my memoir, at age 6, men came to my house, to my childhood home, and my father took 8mm footage of it. My mother took the money from the men. I remember my mom being on the porch and being hand cash by each of the men. And then a rope was put around my neck, and the other end of the rope was tied to a tree. My sister and I had witnessed our kittens being killed by hanging. So I knew what happened if they dropped me. And each man abused me and then would hand me to the next man. And I remember, I was really badly hurt. And I remember one of the men telling my dad, "You went too far, she's gonna die." And I heard that. And I hoped I would die. But I looked over to my mother for comfort, and she just looked at me like I was an insect. I mean, she just looked at me like I was nothing. And that is when I wanted to die. It wasn't after the physical abuse, it was that emotional abuse that my mother just looked at me like I was nothing. But that's when I looked up and I saw what I like to believe was God. Some people would say it was a near-death experience, and it could have been. I was really badly hurt. And, some people would say it was just the sun moving between the clouds or whatever. But I felt a connection with God, and that connection has helped me through my life. So that instant had happened, and then my mother brought me in after I was so badly hurt by the group of men, and she bathed me. She put me in bed with clean sheets on it, and I thought things were better. And then she sexually abused me. I mean, that was obviously a long and horrible abuse that included emotional, physical, and sexual. And I was 6. I will never know how often I was abused in rituals. I will never know how often I was abused in rituals. I will never know how often the incest happened, because thankfully I don't have all my memories. I don't ever want to remember everything. It's just too hard. And I believe my memories come from God, and they come to me as needed. I have memories when it would be helpful to me in my healing, or when it would be helpful to another person in their healing. Recovering memories is really hard. I mean, it's emotional. It's really tough. I had hypnosis, but it's not the kind of hypnosis like you see on TV. The hypnotist, the psychologist who hypnotized me, just got me in a relaxed state. I didn't even realize I was hypnotized because I knew I could get out of it at any time. I knew I could stop any moment I wanted to. My ex-husband came to my first session of hypnosis because we just wanted to make sure she wasn't telling me what to believe, but she wasn't. And so then after that, rather than him take time off work, it was just better for me to just bring a tape recorder. So that's why I have the tapes. I just wanted, just to know and be able to prove that she didn't ask leading questions, and she absolutely did not ask leading questions. I've transcribed those tapes. There is more known about ritualistic abuse, and that's because there's agencies now offering services to child sex trafficking survivors. I didn't know I was a child sex trafficking survivor. I knew my father took pornography of me, but I didn't know that counted as child sex trafficking because he was my father. I didn't learn that I was a survivor of child sex trafficking until after I had done all the filming for my Am I Crazy? My Journey to Determine If My Memories Are True, and I was looking for a fiscal sponsor. Someone suggested a sex trafficking organization, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm not a survivor. And I know so many other survivors of child sex trafficking who did not realize, and adults who were trafficked by their boyfriend, who didn't realize it was trafficking. So now that that's being recognized, there is a percentage of child sex trafficking survivors who are also survivors of ritualistic abuse. I personally think every survivor of ritualistic abuse I have ever talked to is most likely a survivor of child sex trafficking. They were sold, the money probably exchanged hands, or something of value. And the something of value may have been access to other, child victims. I mean, my parents would trade with other people and things like that. So that's still child sex trafficking is whenever anything of value is exchanged for the child's innocence. So I was contacted by a sex trafficking organization, and they said, when they know I'm a survivor and they know I am willing to, I'm also a professional, I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker, I can do training. So they asked me to do training because they are getting so many of their clients report ritualistic abuse. I mean, being so common. And one thing they wanted to know, a really good agency, one thing they want to know is, should we put this on our initial intake form? And I said, I don't think so, because they're not going to tell you right away anyway. People aren't going to say that until they know that they'll be believed. We're so, in the media, in so many ways, we're disbelieved. And so I think it's good that, they come in as child sex trafficking survivors, and then they get services, and then they're willing to disclose. So I really want to be a voice about the satanic ritual abuse. Just published my memoir in November, My Life Now, Essays by a Child Sex Trafficking Survivor. I'm really proud of it. I worked on it for years. The longest essay is How I Healed. People ask me, how did you heal? I used to have fibromyalgia. I used to be basically disabled with chronic pain, and I'm healthy now. So I wrote out so many different suggestions. I wrote out so many things, very specific things that helped me heal.